They say I'm only half Armenian by blood. Maybe. But in my bones, in my DNA, in everything I am Armenian. There's just no such thing as half. This is the story of how I came to understand that through my struggle to carry the language and the legacy of ancestors who endured unspeakable horror and refused to be erased.
The Armenian genocide is such a difficult topic to talk about, partly because it's simply a horrific event in human history. Also because it's very controversial even today. This is something that happened in 1915 as Turkey went into the First World War on the side of the Axis powers and against, of course, a coalition of the Allies, amongst whom was Russia. So the problem is that, of course, Turkey, or the Ottoman Empire, and Russia had been fighting for a long time over territory. And there were many minority groups in the Ottoman Empire who wanted to break away and set up their own states. And the Armenians certainly wanted to do that, with the Russians as kind of their protectors. So that's the general background of the tensions that go into this period of history. What happens is that the government in Turkey decided that the Armenians were a threat. They were a threat both because they wanted to break away and form their own state, and because they were seen as a fifth column who might be helpful to the Russians if the Russians tried to invade. So at some point, either a central decision was made or commanders on the ground took it into their own hands. This is one of the big points of controversy because we don't have access to all the materials in the archives to tell us exactly who knew what and said to do what when. In the event, the tragedy that happens is that Armenians were rounded up from towns and cities, particularly in the east, but also in Istanbul and other cities, and forced to march across the Anatolian countryside through desert conditions, in the heat, through into what we think of as the Syrian desert. The numbers, again, are very controversial, but up to 1.5 million people perished, either as a result of being directly killed or dying of starvation and thirst and deprivation on this forced march. So it's a horrible episode in history, and one that still we need to get to the bottom of by making it totally transparent. And that's something that Turkey has been very reluctant to do, because they don't want to, even today, be held responsible for all of these events and for everything that happened. Even today in Turkey, you cannot discuss the Armenian genocide openly, and the Turkish government will not allow people to speak of it as a genocide.
Okay, I'm here in Armenia, and my daughter-in-law Rubina and I are talking about how words translate into, because Armenian is such an easy language to learn. Look how easy this is. All right, Rubina, what's the word for zoo in Armenian? Of course. So easy. How about the word for microwave? That's great. And look at this one. This is the easiest one of all. How about the word for trim, like the trim on the bottom of your door? See? Armenian is the easiest language in the world to learn. There's your lesson for today.
I never really learned Armenian. I gave it another shot in my early 50s, which lasted about a week with YouTube videos before finally giving up. But somewhere in that struggle, I discovered something. I was always fully Armenian. Half by blood, maybe, but in my bones, my heart, my soul, I've always been whole. Now, just shy of 60, I'm finally planning my first trip to Yerevan. And yes, I still wish I had learned our beautiful ancient language. So do I try again? Yes, I think I will. And to the young Armenians out there, learn it if you can. Don't wait. Language is memory, it's identity, it's connection, and it's worth everything.